Sydney shock jock Alan Jones has a long history of making himself the story, but many believe this time Mr Jones has gone too far, with a joke to a Young Liberals function suggesting the Prime Minister's recently deceased father died of shame at his daughter's lies. The remarks were revealed by a journalist who secretly recorded the speech. Several sponsors of Mr Jones' 2GB radio program have deserted him after Mr Jones gave a qualified apology. He agrees his remarks were unacceptable, but says the government should be condemned for punishing its critics. Connor Duffy reports.
It was the night of nights for Sydney's young Conservatives, and with radio king Alan Jones starring, tickets sold quickly. A three-course meal was complemented by an auction list including a pair of Tony Abbott's signed budgie smugglers. Journalist Jonathan Marshall says the atmosphere was merry.
There was, a lot of alcohol flowing, and the night as it progressed, I suppose became more and more boisterous. I note that Alan Jones himself wasn't actually drinking, and so the speech that he gave, which involved the late John Gillard, wasn't lubricated by Pinot Noir.
When Alan Jones took the floor, he continued his familiar tirade against the government.
They are inveterate and compulsive liars, and they'll lie and lie like...
Building to a crescendo that drew laughter and shock.
Every person in the caucus of the Labor Party knows that Julia Gillard's a liar. Everybody. I'll cover that in a moment. The old man must be died 2 weeks ago. Shame to think that he had a daughter and told lies every time she stood in the parliament. But you see, no, look, hang on.
One of the few people present prepared to talk on the record was the journalist who recorded the speech. He says he was stunned by the comment and surprised by the reaction.
And one of the things that I noted was that no one in that room walked out. There was everyone remaining on their seats, people laughing, people cheering, but there was, I think, an audible sign of, an audible gasp.
The hosts initially praised the speech as brilliant, calling Mr Jones the country's most influential broadcaster. But when the comments hit the press, the Young Liberals issued a belated apology. Alan Jones interrupted his long weekend to hold a lengthy press conference.
Right. Can I just say this, that there are days when you just have to concede and man up and say, you got it wrong.
Today, the organisers and 2 federal MPs, Susan Lee and Alex Hawke, as well as state Liberal MP Ray Williams, who reportedly dined with the Young Liberals, didn't return calls. Labor continued to roll out senior frontbenchers to link Mr Jones with the opposition.
They've had a cultural problem for a long time with the right wing on Sydney University. I saw it firsthand when I was a student there in the early 80s. We know Tony Abbott's form when he was a student at Sydney University.
But nonetheless...
Activists on social media are chasing Alan Jones equally aggressively, though with sponsors rather than politicians as their target. Journalism academic Jenna Price launched a Facebook group called Destroy the Joint 1 month ago, after comments by Mr Jones suggesting some female leaders were doing just that.
It was just such a distasteful, horrible, unpleasant thing to say that it was like a giant upswelling of support for women.
The group already has thousands of fans. Today they've been marshalled to write to all of Mr Jones's sponsors and his employer 2GB, demanding he be sacked.
I think it's definitely women hatred. I don't even think it's it's poor judgment to hate women, but it's misogynist. And I think one of the things is that misogyny shapes the kind of life we can have. And if we allow misogyny in conversation, we can also permit misogyny which leads to violence against women.
And now, Alan Jones comments, thanks to Mercedes-Benz Sydney Zetland. Now,
so far, Freedom Furniture, Challenger, JJ Metro West, ING, Dilmah and Mercedes have responded to the email barrage and pledged to pool their advertising dollars. Marketing analyst Tim Burrowes believes the impact of the withdrawals is being overstated.
A Prime Minister who fiddles with the truth.
I think there'll be a very short-term impact. I'm sure that if we were to tune into the radio station over Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, there might be slightly fewer advertisers in that morning slot. But it's very easy just to move an ad to drive time, for instance, or to actually, postpone a piece of activity that maybe you were planning for this week until next week. So in the long term, I suspect that if we tuned in a month's time, we would notice no difference at all.
Alan Jones was also unavailable today, but has apologised and says he's long been an advocate for women.
I don't mind them having
Mr
views.
Jones's apology was qualified by more criticism of the government and of the journalist who reported his remarks, suggesting the recording could be illegal. The journalist says there was no subterfuge used to get the story.
This was an event which anyone from the public could have purchased a ticket to, and I simply did that. At no point was I asked to provide my occupation.
Alan Jones has already survived a number of inquiries, including his comments last year that the Prime Minister should be put in a chaff bag and thrown out to sea. Through all that, he's remained the king of Sydney radio, and he doesn't believe the current condemnation will be any obstacle to retaining the throne.
I think of all of the controversies that Alan Jones has faced, this is going to be the easiest one for him to survive, mainly because he didn't make the comments on air, so we're not going to see the media regulator looking at this.
And I'm very confident that the station understands quite clearly what my position is on a lot of issues, and that the advertisers equally understand that, and it'll be business as usual.
And we invited Alan Jones to join us tonight, but he didn't respond to our invitation.